Welcome to the Design Imposter podcast, the show where we explore the enigmatic world of imposter syndrome through the lens of design, community, and empowerment. I'm Monique Jenkins.
And I'm Jessica Valis. We're your co-hosts of the show and the founders of the Creative Circle Collective, a design agency that strengthens community links for nonprofits and corporate businesses by creating impactful branding and websites. Join us as we explore the relationship between design, community, and creativity. Welcome to Design Imposter.
Welcome back to the Design Imposter podcast. Today we have a special episode where we're exploring UX leadership in the vast landscapes of large organizations. Today we are joined by two seasoned UX designers, Bri-anna and Kellie Porter, who will share their insights and experiences about what it's like working at large organizations.
Welcome to the show, guys.
So we're going to jump right in. Bri-anna, Kellie, tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do at your organizations. I'm going to start with you, Bri-anna.
So I'm Bri-anna. I'm a senior user experience designer and strategist. I work predominantly on web tools at my organization, web applications. I'm also the owner of Opportunity Design Co., which is also a web design company where I lead the UX for all of our projects.
Kellie.
My name is Kellie Porter. I am technically a hybrid UX/visual designer at my large enterprise organization, which shall not be named. I work in their data and AI sector on their data ops and data fabric, and I work with master data management.
And I'm going to ask you two to give us a little background context. So tell us, I'm going to start with you, Bri-anna. Tell us how you got into UX and how you got to this particular place in your career.
So I actually originally started off in marketing analytics, so just completely different. And then I went into social media where I was working more so visual design and strategy. That was where the pivot happened for me at my previous company, where I was able to actually start working on UI projects. So that allowed me to leverage my visual design skills, tap into my analytics background. And then ultimately I began teaching UX, and that led me into the path that I am now, which is working in UX.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Kellie?
Nice. So like everything else I've gotten into was by accident. I have a background in communications design, graphic design, and illustration. I actually started out wanting to be a digital designer, illustrator, transversed my academic career all the way into digital design, got into web design. Similar to you, I was in a program where I was learning about UX, and then I ended up having to teach some of my classmates and then previous or following cohorts after, because I was the only one that knew how to code. So I was designing and coding at the same time. Ended up getting my first junior UX role at a publishing house in New York City. And then from there, I accidentally got to the organization that I'm at from a conference, and I'm here now.
First, tell us how you two got into UX as far as like from a boot camp program, whether it was you learning kind of on the go or if you went to a traditional college route.
I actually fell into UX, so similar to your story, on accident. So for me, it happened when I started my web design business. As I began to find new ways to improve my processes and improve collaboration, I fell into Figma. I fell into all these things. And then for me, it just made sense. I was trying to pivot out of visual design, pivot out of social. And I was thinking, what is a good next step for me? And it just so happened that I had all the makings of a designer, but I didn't take any UX specific classes. I didn't take a boot camp. It was just more of like, I was able to show and prove my skills and capabilities when I put together my portfolio, and it was enough for me to get hired.
Nice. What about you, Kellie?
So my first intro to UX was actually through my academic career. So my last year, or second to last semester in my bachelor's program, we had a UX class, which was this was back in 2015. This was one of the few colleges that actually had a UX program. Mm-hmm. And this still kind of unheard of, but it was part of our curriculum for our web design minor, because I'm a web design minor. I went to school at a public institution, so that should tell you everything you need to know about me. My education had to be very scrappy. You kind of had to get pieces from everywhere to get things done. Mm-hmm. And that's also how I learned UX, is I had to be scrappy and get things done how I need to get them done. Mm-hmm. And so in doing so, I was like, I really like putting all these things together and getting all this feedback and doing the research and coding. I didn't really like the coding at the time, but I liked it eventually when it related to UX. And so I eventually took another UX program after I graduated, which was a boot camp, but it was also the first boot camp that they were running. So I was cohort 1, and it was also run through the same public institution that I graduated from. So it was very, very, very scrappy. And I had to make things work. And I think that's the only thing that allowed me to get to this point is that I figured out how to make things work with very limited resources and very small scope.
Yeah. I think that like there's so much pressure to have some type of education now, but they're really like you can actually be self-taught. I'm a example of that. Yeah.
I had a client, they were like, now do you need to train me specifically on this program? I said, no, you can get the whole library of step-by-step instructions on YouTube. Like, you can be an expert on this without me if you want to.
I mean,
and that's true for anything, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when I started and I was doing web design, I was designing like a checkout experience, and I was having so much fun, and I was thinking to myself, I'm insane that I'm having so much fun doing this. And then I Googled and I was like, oh, I came upon UX, I came across the whole entire industry, and then I felt frustrated that I didn't know about it sooner and that I couldn't have went and gotten a formal education on it. And so that's when I started my self-learning, and in my current position I asked if I could take on UI projects so that I could get that real world experience, kind of like applying my self-learning.
So I have a question from that. Did you feel when you felt the need to like, where you felt like you were behind, did you feel the need to catch up and then you went to like a program to do that? Because I noticed with a lot of boot camp students, they feel like they should have known it already and they're trying to catch up. And so there's this urgency that they're trying to adhere to, but then us as all instructors, we're looking at them and we're on the inside looking out at them, and we're just like, that's not what this is.
Hashtag imposter syndrome.
I mean, that gets into a real question about boot camps and who.
And that was my next question. So yes,
like who is the real target of boot camps and who benefits from boot camps? I think we have unique experience because we both taught boot camps before. And I think when you talk about that urgency, it comes from different places. It's playing catch up. It's you maybe were laid off or you need to find work and you know that you can make a lot of money doing UX and this seems like something that you can get into. So from the other side of being instructors, we have to kind of navigate that where we're dealing with people who come to boot camps with a sense of urgency because they see it as a last ditch result. Almost like how people sometimes get into investing because they need a really quick financial return. That seems to be the mindset of a lot of people who are going into boot camps.
And I'll answer your question. Boot camps are for the boot camps themselves. They have some sense of resources for the students, but it's really it's kind of like selling a dream because he's shaking. They sell this idea that like you can do all these things and you get all these things done. You can make all the money you want to make. You can work on projects that you love, and you can work at these really great office spaces. And all you have to do is dedicate 12 weeks to us, and then on the other side, everything will be rainbows and butterflies, and there's a pot of gold. And I think one thing that we've all learned doing it, but you and I doing it and then going back and then teaching it,
Right.
is like, oh, this is not for
It's not realistic. I think boot camps benefit you if you are looking to make a career pivot and you see I have a very, very strong visual design background and I just maybe need to really grasp the research portion and then I want to go out and do UX. Or if you say I have a really strong visual design background and I want to see how I can apply that to UI in the UX space. Okay, you're coming into that boot camp with a set of tools. That you're adding more tools to the toolbox you already have. This boot camp will benefit you in a way. We have a lot of people who have been sold the dream where you have no understanding whatsoever of any of the overarching concepts that you need to know in order to participate in this boot camp and be successful. But that's okay because we have 12 weeks and we can get everything done for you. And those are the people who tend to have a harder time because you're not just learning a new tool or just adding on one concept. You're trying to learn everything from scratch. So
I 100% agree with that. I have a lot of students who have gone through a boot camp program and have said like, I don't know what I got out of this besides more in debt. I I don't know what this is supposed to do for me. I'm not interested in this anymore. I don't even want to do it. Or because I think the course load is so much so quickly that people just like, it's over their heads and they just kind of like drown themselves out. They stop paying attention. And once you miss a week's worth of the course, you've missed too much to catch back up. Like, it's so hard to get back to the place where you need to go. Once you are like, I just need a break from this, I'm going to take a week. It's so hard to play catch up with the students.
I didn't do this with UX, but I did do this with LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And it's like you said, you're doing it for a couple weeks. The moment you stop doing it, you're done. You can't play catch up. I mean, you got videos and tutorials and stuff, but it's just too much.
And I think that's the quiet, loud part about design, but specifically UX design. There's so much. Yeah. It's an umbrella, right? Mm-hmm. And then I have students who come from non-technical backgrounds, non-design backgrounds, who are just like, they're like, oh, at the end of this program, I should be able to ... Mm-hmm. It specifically like things with type. I have to preface them and let them know, like, I had 3 or 4 type classes before I graduated college.
Yeah, right.
You may have one lecture about it, maybe.
Yeah.
There's a lot of learning to do while you're learning, and you have to have the mindset. The mindset's the thing that makes the difference. Like, you have to have the mindset to want to do this, but overall, this aspect of, just come into a week, so everything will be fine, and you'll be a UX designer. It's like, well, you're actually getting into one of the more technically deep parts of being in product design, I would say, and in the tech world in general. I think that part people kind of lose.
It's hard when people come to you for advice. I'm also a mentor, so I have a lot of people who come and it's the same. I can almost like guess before they even open their mouth. I did a boot camp. I'm having a hard time finding work. I'm trying to transition. We take a look at everything and I can say, I see why you're having a hard time. And then we talk about certain things, or we go over certain things, and, oh, that wasn't mentioned in my boot camp, or like, oh, I didn't know actually about this, or, you know, maybe realistic expectations were not set in regard to like, you're going to graduate, but based off of where you are at the moment that you graduate will determine what your ramp up period will be. You being side by side to someone who came from visual design, who's, you know, worked with Fortune 500 clients or what have you, and took this because they made a strategic plan for their career and this makes sense for their pivot, they're going to have an easier time transitioning. So,
I think having a good instructor is pivotal in the whole thing. I remember when we started teaching at Towson University, and I was going to teach website design, and they're like, we specifically want somebody who owns an agency or works in the real world because our students are graduating and their employers are like, they don't know what they need to know. So when I brought them on, I was like, all right, we're going to start with the presentations. We're going to do the mood board. We're going to do these drafts. And they're like, oh my God, I did not know we could do this. And I think when, you know, it really depends on how much the professor, mentor, teacher it gives you.
I'm going to pivot a little bit because I want to talk about these large organizations you guys work
at. Where do you work?
We're not saying.
Can I add a tid? I'll actually like challenge you and say it's really the curriculum, because having a great instructor, because they don't know what they don't need to know, is like, I need you to know what's missing from the curriculum so that you can pull that out and share. And a lot of times the curriculum is really not thought through as robust as it needs to be.
Or side note, not made by designers.
Side note, when I was hired, they did not have a curriculum. I had to make it myself. Week by week lesson plans. So
it's a lovely time, guys.
Okay, I just had to
all right, so we're shifting a little bit because I'd like to understand or get a better understanding of how much UX plays a part in shifting design strategy or even product strategy at large organizations. I know when I was working for a bigger organization, although UX was a loving part of the team, they did not have a say. Their initiatives did not get put at the forefront. I think the initiatives of the marketing team and the engineering team were at the forefront, and then UX kind of just like paddled to follow along, but they weren't necessarily the decision makers that needed to be a part of the beginning process, although you should always start with UX. That wasn't the sense that I got. So in your experiences at all of the organizations that you've ever worked at, some type of consensus of, do you think that that UX leads design strategy or strategy at larger companies?
I can start with that one. So at my mysterious, unnamed, large organization, I can say specifically for UX and then specifically for my UX team, we've carried strategies.
Okay.
And we've carried our strategies throughout some known and unknown reorgs, some surprise reorgs. And I think that's a good and bad thing. One, in the nature of UX, it's not how UX is supposed to work. We're supposed to come together on a product. We're supposed to decide what it is that is needed. We're supposed to come in from like user insights, product insights, and then go forth and design an experience. We shouldn't be leading strategy to a certain extent. We should have a say. We shouldn't be leading strategy in the way that everything else is going on around us, and everybody's trying to collect the pieces to that. So collecting pieces to requirements, putting piece by piece by piece, and we as a team are still expected to deliver. So we're designing pieces, like how you build a curriculum week by week. We're designing piece by piece without the information ahead of time. And so what I realized from that is like UX design kind of carries like the working class man of America, like carries a lot of this product and product creation and implementation. But in terms of like recognizing how important it is, it's usually like, oh, well, we have to worry about development. Yeah. We have to worry about product management. We have to meet the client's goals and business needs. And so it's just like, carry the rest of us, carry us the rest of the way, but we're going to figure out everything else. We're going to look here. We don't really know what you need. So I have some of the tea for you about what happened in our reorgs, but I'll get to that part later.
What about you, Bri-anna?
I think that I've seen it play many different roles. I've seen UX be used as a Band-Aid where we don't really know, and figure it out. Well, and you get things and they're incomplete or they don't make sense or nothing's connecting or no one's talked to Deb yet. And then UX has to be the Band-Aid of like, well, does this make sense? Can we do this? Is this feasible? Do we have buy-in? Do we have budget? And so I've seen that. I've also seen where UX is the yes man, and it's like, well, this is what they want.
Yeah.
So we just do it, and we don't ask questions. I think I really like being in a space where we can push back, and I think more of a space has been made where we can say, oh, this is the directions we've been given. We've had time to digest it, and this doesn't make sense. Can we set up a call to talk about, is this a real priority or what's missing? Yeah.
I want to tap into that because that was my next question is how has UX helped to shape or shift product direction after you've gotten an initiative? Because I know, sometimes things come from the head and they're just like, this is what we want you to do. And then you start to do the user research and you realize what you're asking for doesn't make sense for the consumer that we're trying to market to. And that's a really difficult conversation to have with people who have a very keen mindset on what they want. Sometimes I think you're able to shift them. Sometimes you're not able to shift them. But what's that conversation like for you?
I think that how the conversation usually goes is that we try to focus on it from a feature perspective. So it's not necessarily like, why are we doing this? It's more of, okay, these are the parameters that were laid out as a feature or as a need by the user. We've had time to look into it, think about it. These are the flaws that we have found. And then we have a conversation about that. I think it helps, especially when you're dealing with stakeholders, to where it doesn't feel like a personal thing or a personal attack or things get muddy. It's more of like, no, we want to build the solution. We're just trying to better understand the reasoning behind why we want to pursue this particular thing.
And what about you, Kellie?
So I say that a lot of times before one of our reorgs, we had a lot of research to give us that fallback to say to our other product team members and stakeholders, I mean, yeah, you want to do this, but the users are actually doing this. And maybe they're saying they want something, but what they're actually doing is something different. And in my unique experience with implementing the design as we were coming up with the requirements, is that there was an idea of what it was that it was going to look like, and we actually had the evidence to say, hey, that actually doesn't exist in the product. And technically speaking, it doesn't exist technically, and also the users don't want that, or do they need that? That's not what they're at. So
Yeah.
You can have this idea. You can like this idea, but are we still trying to meet business goals? Are we still trying to make that business outcome and match it? And then when you say it like that, that's when everybody starts to listen, because no one really cares what it looks like. Nobody cares how the experience works. But when you start to attach it to that, oh, are we meeting our business goals? They're like, oh, yes. Yeah. KPIs, yes.
Love KPIs.
That's when we have that evidence to fall back on.
Buzzwords. I have a question, because this is an experience that I went through. I was hired at a company, and the previous UX designer had just been let go because she did too much research. What has been your experience with research? So I think that the way that it was explained to me is that there is a difference between research for research sakes and like practical application, that something has to result from this research. And it really depends on your company. I have friends who work at UX, or big organizations who have been doing research projects for 4 years. I have friends that work at companies that have been doing research for a week, and you got to get something out the door. It just depends on the organization. Where is the sweet spot as far as research is concerned? Because I do think that 4 years of research is a very long time, depending on how intricate your problem is, to be doing research but not actually producing anything tangible in a week to like do everything that you possibly can do in order to get a product out the door. So in your relative organizations, how much time do you guys do for research? And then how important is research a factor in the overarching problem that you have?
We tend to have 2 layers of research. So,
because Kellie got something to say. Because Kellie got something to say.
Where is the research? When we receive something, there's already been some level of research done. We go back and try to fill in some gaps or just confirm what was given to us. So it's kind of almost like a second check. Like a check and balance almost. I think we all know the purpose of research is to give you like a clear understanding of what direction you should be heading in. There are multiple steps in the process where we fold it in. It shouldn't just be, it starts in the beginning and it never happens anymore. Like it progresses through the life of the project, ideally. So what we've just been doing is just interfacing with our research team, because we have specific people set aside for research, even though we as designers, we will sometimes dabble, and we just bring them along the process so that it's not a conversation that ends, but it is a bit condensed for sure.
So I was laughing because amongst our reorgs, our structure for our design team was that we actually had designated user researchers. And how our structure worked is that we had research being done, because specifically for our org, we're working in data and AI. Data and AI is up and coming. We have a lot of AI actually being put out now that, due to a lot of these reorgs that happened last year, we lost our user researchers. So we don't have them attached to specific teams anymore. They all went and merged into one thing, and they're working on one thing specifically that everybody's probably seen the commercial for. They're not working with us anymore. We'll see how that works out. But research is always being done for our product and what we're doing. It's not experimental, but in the sense that it's still a space that they're building a lot of things for. And so as they're building it, we have research always being done on the back end about something that's up and coming. With our user researcher, they would do all the research for us. They would bring us their insights. And if we did any research, it would be secondary. It would be after we built initial mock-ups and wireframes and implemented something, then we would test it. We have, in the last 7 months now, actually had to go through the process of figuring out how to do our own research, because we don't have that designated user research anymore. And we also have to start working on implementing designers who weren't doing research to now do research in a very experimental space. So it's all up and coming, and it's TBD. When we lost our researcher, everyone was like, oh, we don't have researchers anymore? Yeah, who's going to do the research?
I will say I've always had to work at organizations where one person does everything. So you do your research, you validate your own research, you do your user testing, you create your mock-ups, you do your hi-fi, you go back and validate. So you do the entire process, which I think is good from a generalist perspective. You guys work for large enough organizations that I expect for them to have research teams, and those to be different from your UI teams, and those to be different from your developers, and so on and so forth. So that makes sense. But one of the things that I think that I hear from at least people who are coming from boot camps or people just trying to get into UX in general is like, what does that team structure look like? How do you guys work as a department with the other teams? Like, are there pods? Who's in the pod? How does this like all of these departments kind of work together and create the synergy to like push something forward?
A lot of meetings. A lot of meetings is what I would say.
So what's the pod structure at your company?
So we have within, I'm trying to be vague.
Yeah.
So within my team, we have UX designers, a group of UX designers. We have a group of researchers. We have a content team. We have our PM and just kind of technical IT folks. Because of the nature of our work, which is, government consulting, we may not also be in control of development.
Okay.
We have a development team, but sometimes there might be a different development team.
Okay.
Or there might be another team who's done the pre-work. Or we might have done the pre. It really truly just depends for that project. Even the project owner, it just depends. Right. So we have kickoffs where everybody's involved. We know who's leading what, all the teams. And it's just more of like a sequential process. They figure out all the requirements and what's needed is passed on to us. Our research team gets a hold of it, validates things, passes it on to design. We kind of loop around, look back. We have touch bases with development at the right time. We do a lot of demos. So when I say a lot of meetings, I mean it. And that's ultimately like how we make sure everybody's in the loop with everything, and we have regular demos throughout, our sprints.
I want to go back to something Monique said where she's like, oh, in my organizations, I did the UX research and then I did the UX design. And I didn't realize that it could be broken up into different roles.
Yes.
But I guess even like when you think about website design, there's the designer, the developer, maybe somebody on the back end. And I didn't think about it that way. We had an episode where you started talking about UX, and I was like, I'm out. That's not for me.
She definitely in the middle of the episode was like, yeah, I'm out. I don't want to do that anymore. Which I get. I think it can be very cumbersome depending on how large or small your organization is. That you are the everything as far as UX concerned. I would have loved to be a part of the team structure. I would have loved to be a part of a team structure where we differentiated between the researcher and the UI designer. That's just not where we ever got. When we thought and talked about pod structure, it was there's one PM, there are 3 or 4 engineers who are in there. There's a UX designer who is also UI. There's a content person, there's legal, a part of that pod structure. And we all work together in assemblage to create the design that the UX person has put together. Not necessarily that like that ever left our ethos. The only real like team interaction that I would have gotten with other researchers are in our like design syncs, where we have like a Monday morning sync. I would showcase my design to the other designers, and then we would like rip it apart, kind of decide what's what. And I think that the place that we got to at our company was we regularly did not show the design to the engineering side. So when development sees it, they have a different expectation about what's about to happen. So then they start to say like, nope, don't want to do that, can't do that. There's an easier way to do that. And there was always contention between the product team and the engineering team about what should happen. And then we always would get in a conversation of like, when is the most appropriate time to bring in engineering? Is it in the beginning phase when we're still doing user testing? Is it in the end where we already have the designs and we've already validated them? And how responsible is the engineering team for making sure that the designs that we put forward are actually functional in the way that we need them to accomplish the user goal? So that's what's really interesting for me.
I think that's interesting. First off, even though you're on a team with different positions under the umbrella, you're expected to do all aspects of that spectrum.
Yes.
So we don't have researchers now. Cool. We got to do the research. My team had functioned, I think, for almost a year and a half without visual designers. Everybody on the team had to pick up their own visual design. So it's like, cool, we can be down a couple people. Work still got to get done.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's interesting you mentioned that, like, you talk about when to bring in developers. Our developers are on our projects from requirement.
Yeah.
I've never had that.
Yeah.
They build out the requirements with us, and specifically for my design that I had to lead, it was just us and dev at one point because of all the reorgs. So it was just design and dev working to build out requirements, and we have dev in there because they know the technical back end better than anyone else. And so we have to take into consideration what they're saying can be done and can't be done.
Yes.
Specifically, when we define a budget or when any company defines a budget, development is the one who says, here's where the budget's going to go. Here's where we can show you technically where all this money needs to go.
Yeah.
And so they want to hear from development. Yes, no, are we approved? So when I did my design and I was working on it on the first project I led, like we went into our feature squad meetings and design would present, I would present my work, and development was there as one of the stakeholders to say, yes, no, you have to consider this, you have to remove this. So they're a part of the whole process. We don't do anything without them.
Girl, that's not my experience. We just slide them in on at the end. They be like, no, we can't do it. I'd be like, make it happen,
Well,
y'all.
this is the value of having people from
Yeah.
outside of just you and me
Yeah.
and bringing this educational aspect to
Yeah.
it.
And I'm curious, how much of a say, because I was like, what we got to with our developers was like, I don't like that design. So they had a say in like, I'm not sure about that color, or I'm not sure about that something else. And I'd be like, I
developers.
don't want you to be sure about that. That's validated with the
You're
user experience.
developers.
So I want to be clear about like where we going here. I'm not looking for your design opinion necessarily. I am looking for you to make sure that the functionality can be done. But I think what we got to, at least the organizations I've worked at, is that engineers are now giving me their opinion about what they believe is best UX practice or best design practice. And that's when I got to be like, I thought that was my job.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I thought that was my job, not your job. But so I think there was a little bit of like tension between teams there. Is that something that you guys have experienced where your development team is telling you, I don't like the design that you've put forward and I would like for you to change it as a result?
So I'll say this. I always appreciate when developers can give me insight into user experience because there's some things that as a UX designer who is just a UX designer, even though I have development experience, I like to hear from the developers what they think. We're on our project right now, and one of the things that's holding us up is that development isn't sure that what we designed is the best user experience. And that's like, cool, great. Is this going out at release? 'Cause that's why we're here. What are we talking about?
That's Kelly's way of saying it's not going out. It's
Are we
held
gonna
up.
have a feature? Like, it's more so, especially for how our product works and how we work. Development always had a say from the beginning, and everything that we designed, they approved, gave us a yes to. So being in that position now, where development is just like, hey, we're not too sure. It's like, well, the time to not be sure was last year when we got this approved. Now you must be sure.
Yes.
So
Now you must execute.
yeah, now's the time to show. And so we're having that problem right now, but I think part of it is also in terms of having all those reorgs, the bandwidth on development is like stretched thin. They are working probably understaffed on more than what they expected to work on, and that's the nature of these large companies and their large reorgs, aka layoffs that have happened. And I feel from their perspective what they're saying. However, it's important that you reiterate to them, hey, are we talking about the user experience? Because we would love to hear about the technical aspect. Now is we don't work on the technical aspect, but if we're talking about the user experience, we can give you all the evidence for the user experience because we did the design and we gave the best design. So that's where we're at now, and it's a fine line to walk without saying, hey, you're stepping on our toes. But you also have to say, hey, you're stepping on our toes.
I'd be like, nope, do what I asked you to do. So I ain't playing. You better do it. And I bribe people with cookies too.
So we have a unique situation where it's not necessarily dev, but we have people who are a part of the overarching process who have IT insights, who feel empowered to try to drive design from that insight that they have. And it comes to a point where you have to ask, is this a requirement? Is this a technical thing to where we get in the way of feasibility if we don't do this? Or is this a suggestion? So we've kind of gotten to the point where we've just been more direct in that way. If it's something where if we go down this route, it's just technically not doable, or it causes a bunch of problems, or it doesn't mesh well with our back end or whatever, let us know. If it is a opinion or a suggestion, let us know. And we'll take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really all we can guarantee, is that we will consider it, but not necessarily that we're going to execute on it.
Yeah. I think that we, at least in the organizations that I've worked in, let opinion change the direction of the design.
I've seen it.
So much so that we had to stop. I call it shiny object syndrome.
And
I'm like, somebody says like, oh, well, we should add AI now. Oh,
I'm hated.
okay. I didn't think that was what we was doing. All right, cool. And then we have to figure out, because I've said this to everyone, you know who you are. I don't care if it's the CEO or the janitor. An opinion is an opinion, and I'm not about to do that. So we can put your opinion in the next round. I can put a feature flag on there for the next iteration. We can talk about it. We can discuss it. And we can talk about the legitimacy of what that is. But that's very much an opinion. And we already have a set path. We've all decided as a team that this is a set path, and this is the direction that we're rowing in. And if we rowing in the wrong direction, we rowing together, because we went through a lot of steps to get to this particular place. Now we have to build. We have to create something actionable. If we throw away everything that we just worked on right this second, it's not gonna work, guys. Like, we have to push something out.
Put it in the backlog.
I will put it in the backlog.
All right.
It's a long backlog.
I do have questions for you now.
Yes.
Okay. Can you, without being specific, if you don't need
Okay.
to, tell me about a project where you did the UX, the dev and engineering team were like, okay, cool, we'll do it. You saw it executed and it got the exact results that you wanted. And then maybe a time where you had that pushback and the results were not there.
I don't like the way you guys are looking at each other.
Like, just to prove, like, to show how, with the value of UX.
I'm gonna answer that. I think there have been times where what I think is really good is knowing that you're building the wrong thing, build it anyway, and then be able to show proof. So I have had executives come to me and be like, AI, why don't you put a chatbot on the page? And I'm like, it doesn't make sense in the context of the thing that we're building. And they say, I don't care, do it anyway. And I say, we've done research and this is not the direction we should go down. And they say, I don't care, build it anyway. And we built it, and then we saw a 50% drop in conversion. I can use that the next time I'm going to have this argument as saying, hey, we did exactly what you asked to do and exactly the way that you asked us to do it, and look what happened. This is what happens when you don't use the research that we have been developing over the course of months, and we just go and kind of like a fly-by-night thing. There have also been points in time where someone has said, put AI on it, it'll be great, and it's worked out perfectly. I can't say for sure that the idea that they're pitching isn't going to be incredible and feasible and amazing, or that it's going to fail completely, because I haven't done the research to gain the context that we need to feel sure about the decision. And I can't really equate it in the metrics to conversion that is either good or bad, depending on what it is, because I don't know where it's coming from. I think Evan was talking about this earlier. Evan's our producer. You guys know Evan, which is he is in the process of creating Google ads for someone, but they hired 2 different marketing firms who are doing Google ads. You can't tell the person who is getting the conversion of those Google ads if they're coming from Evan's services or if they're coming from another person's services, only that there is some conversion that's happening here. So there's a distinguishment between that. It could be, well, and certainly, because he said AI and AI is on the site, it could be nothing to do with that and some other feature release that went out round about the same time that is contributing to those conversion numbers. So is every person going to be able to say like yay or nay, this happened as a result of this? Like, I've worked on, something I worked on that like drove me insane, still drives me insane to this moment, never fixed this problem, not gonna lie. In a website that I was building, they had a login or account creation. User puts in their email address, and if they have an email already with our company, because they signed up for our services at some other point, there would be like a little flash that says, you already have an email address, click here. For some reason, no one ever saw that button. I don't care how big I made it. I don't care how red I made it. I don't care if it took up the whole screen, if it was a pop-up. People were just clicking off, and they were keep trying to go through the application, but they couldn't because they already had an existing account. Right. Now, what we were doing on the back end without the user knowing is we would create an account for a person unbeknownst to them when they put their email address in as they went through the form field. So they are like, I didn't even get through page 1. I never created an account, because they're correlating that with specific actions. happens. But on our internal side, we created an account for them and they had to use it. So it would say you need to reset your password. And from their perspective, they're like, why would I need to reset my password? I've never created an account with this company. And they would get really stuck there. And I think I watched user footage one day. It was someone sitting on the page for like 20 minutes, just going back and forth, clicking in the box, being like I could like see his mind thinking and then his, rage clicks. And then you could see him like rage clicking. And it was just like, I know that he knows that he didn't create an account. It doesn't matter that I'm making this message bigger. It doesn't matter that I'm making it in red. I can't get people to get beyond this step because they know what they didn't do for certain.
Right.
And on the back end, we're doing this. So I would ask the engineering team, why are we creating accounts on the back end if a person hasn't gotten through the first page of the application? They're like, because it's easier. Once they get into the second page, they're automatically signed in. We send them an email, da-da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, it doesn't make sense. Like, they don't understand that they have an account in the place they never signed up for an account for.
Right.
So then we had, customer service reps who'd have to call a customer and they'd be like, hey, I saw you were on the site, you were doing da-da-da-da-da, can I help you through your application? However, that's resources that we didn't need to use. Now we are physically getting on the phone and calling every single customer who cannot properly get through the application because I couldn't fix this part of the user experience. Never fixed it. It never worked. But it was a practice and me going crazy, which is like, how do I change this design? What do I do to call people's attention to the fact that there is an account created, even though they know they did not create an account? And then how many times how many times is a person going to sit on this page and be confused before they just are like, I don't have time. I gotta go.
To another thing of like, you can't out design bad experience, like
exactly.
user UX,
Yep.
And that's why I love user testing. I'll pivot and answer this question that you didn't ask.
No, go
me.
ahead. Go ahead.
My favorite part of user testing is when you just know it makes sense and you throw it in front of people and they're like, this is dumb. I don't know what's happening. Where's the button? What does this do? And I really love the ability to be able to sit in all the tests, hear people's like exact responses to things. And I think that's how you ultimately get to a point where you have the happy ending in a best case scenario where the design is great, dev does it, everybody's happy and everything looks good by doing that testing up front. So it's not necessarily the question you asked me, but this is what I can answer.
Okay.
That I think that when you sacrifice research or have people do research that are not necessarily trained properly to do it, it puts you in a bad position. When you sacrifice user testing, it puts you in a bad position and it sets dev up to fail. It sets a lot of people up to fail because you're not taking the steps to do the checks and balances before it even gets to dev. Like, all they should be worrying about is just developing it and timelines. But sometimes dev gets the heat for things that could have been solved if other steps were taken in the beginning.
I will say my experience as a junior UX designer, I worked on a project from, I say inception all the way to maintenance. And we started out building the project through a design sprint. And I was with my senior designer at the time because I was a junior. And development was on that project as well, too. And they were in our design sprint as well. And I think that's the smoothest that I've seen a product be built thus far. I understand why other products or features can't be built that way. I understand that it's time constraints, resources, all this other stuff. But we had a dedicated team that we started out at the beginning of like a 2-year cycle. Start out, build this project. We did the research as the UX designers. We had the dev come in and give their input before there was any technical anything. They gave their input. We knew what database they were going to use to build. We knew what backend language, what frameworks they were going to use. We were able to give input and see from all aspects of it, and that was the smoothest I saw. And it's the rarest too, because then you had all these people dedicated to this one thing for 2 years. So that's usually what happens. We were able to do research with MVP that we built, a prototype that we built at the end of the design sprint, and get users to actually test it out, which is unheard of. We never get to do that. Able to go back in, start building wireframes, get users to test that as well too. Implement it, get users to test that. So there was a lot of iteration in that cycle. And I think that if we could get more resources and more time to do things like that, we would have a lot of better outcomes with a lot of things. But it was also the nature of the environment and the industry that we were in. We weren't in big tech. We weren't pushing things out to consumers. There was it was an industry education where everything was a little bit more niche, and we had a little bit more time. You're big tech, you're customer facing, and you have consumers that you're trying to onboard. and sell to at the same time. So it's a lot of fire drills, and you're putting everything out at the same time.
Okay. I'll ask you guys a softball question, which I know you both could answer, about software that you use at your relatively large organizations. Shh, it's a secret. So what do you guys use? I'm gonna put that in the description too. I'm like, he should not be named. Corporation. About to patent that, bro. Tell us about the software that you use, daily to kind of complete your jobs.
We use everything. We use it all. Whenever you think,
what's everything?
Okay, wonderful. So we started out using InVision and Sketch, and I was there my first year using that. We offboarded from that, and now we're on Figma now because they're like, oh yeah, we can use this, and they were telling us in the back end, we're not giving you a license for Figma. We don't care what you want, care how much you cry. We don't need it. We pay for something else.
Yeah.
Not getting.
We already paid for this.
And they were just like, "Oh, this could save us money. Get the license."
Yeah, go ahead, girl.
Sometimes to make money, you gotta spend money.
For sure.
Exactly.
Listen, they were just like, we can offboard these 2 products that you're working on, these 2 design tools, which was Sketch and InVision, and just have Figma. They were like, oh no, do that, yeah. One license. Of course. We have Mural, which we use a lot to do presentations, and I would say the one piece of software that we have, which isn't really software, but software nonetheless, is we have our notes taking app. I won't name it because I think it's specific to our company, so I'll stay vague with that one.
Okay.
But we take a lot of notes, and then we have to present our notes. So before you even get to Mural, and when we have to talk to our product team and our feature squad, one task I say designers should always be good at that is underrated and no one thinks about is note taking. And organization. If you can take good notes and you can be organized, you can be a fantastic designer.
Come on.
One of the best. But there are times where you don't get to do the diagram or the flow chart. You don't get to do the mock-ups. You have to just present what it is that was talked about so that we can have a discussion. And so we use our note-taking app, and that's one that I spend the most time in. I was actually in it before we started the podcast, writing notes for our Monday meeting that we're going to present in the morning. So.
What about you? Any other tools that you guys use?
Yes, Figma is an industry standard tool that will be utilized.
I like that.
Yeah, I think when you say like large organizations, it's interesting because organization adoption of tools takes a lot longer.
Yes.
So I think one thing that was funny was everyone was like Figma, and at the time, a lot of the larger organizations were not there yet, had not adopted the tool. We're still in older things like Sketch and InVision, and then you go through the transition. So, we've transitioned. It took some time and some effort, but yeah, Figma, definitely. Mural is really awesome and helpful. We've used that to, do things. And then, I can't say too much about our tool stack, but yeah.
I was gonna say I used Lucid Chart as well. So we have Mural, I think, for a little bit, but then I think we went to Lucid Chart because it's already a part of the Google ecosystem, which I don't like more than Mural because it's just not good. And then Figma came out with
FigJam.
I was gonna say justice for FigJam. It's really good.
Yes, FigJam.
We're not paying for the FigJam license.
Yeah, I get that.
Y'all don't have an enterprise license?
Our enterprise license doesn't include.
You don't get
FigJam.
You don't get FigJam. You don't get developer mode.
No.
You don't get developer mode for real because they have annotations.
We don't make those. They're just like, here you go. Wow. Do with this what you will.
Okay. And then I'm gonna pivot a little bit. We're gonna stop talking about these large organizations, and we're gonna talk about you guys personally, because I think that one of the things that I heard a lot when I originally got into UX is there are no Black women in UX. I would host events through not-for-profits that I ran, and people would come up to me and they'd be like, I didn't know there were Black UX designers. I didn't know that we found a niche in the space. I wasn't I'm not sure how to even get in the path. And I think whenever I find other Black women who are also UX designers, I hold on to them closely. Y'all ain't never getting rid of me. So just get over it. If I offend you, just tell me. I'll apologize. But that's one of the questions that I get a lot from, especially from junior UX designers in these different pathways that we have is, there are any black women in UX, or how do I get into UX as a black person? I certainly have been the only black member on my team. I've been the only UX person on my team at sometimes. But I think that it's a very interesting question, because I think the way that we think about UX as a minority who it already has some sense of like, you know, segregation as far as some things are concerned, that it can be incredibly daunting for someone else to want to get into our space and to understand the nuances of potentially building for someone who is not a part of your core demographic. Sometimes you're building technology for people who do not look like you, and that means that there are things that people don't consider for, you know, people of color as they build out technology. How did you guys, or how have you found it being a black woman in UX, and how do you contribute back to other people who you want to be able to get in the space?
Well, I can say for sure, again, coming from that scrappy background, I always go and look for the things that I need to find. So as soon as I wake up, feet touch the ground, I'm going to go out and find the things I need to find. And I go into a lot of spaces, and I go into a lot of places where there are a lot of black people represented, and then there are a lot of women represented. And I think for me, I realized towards the end of my college years, like I was going into an industry that was neither black nor woman dominated. And I was like in the classroom, the only one sitting down. I'm like, why am I alone technically? And so I couldn't figure it out. So it made me want to go to places where there was more representation. So I would say at my first job, we had a very diverse group, and I still ended up being the only black woman on the team. So it wasn't just white male dominant. It was a lot of different demographics and a lot of different races and genders represented. But still me by myself. And then I think that now in my current company, I actually am surrounded by other black women specifically on my team, and I have access to other UX designers who are also black women and at different levels too in the organization. So they're not just, I see like, you know, not individual contributors. Some of them are managers, some of them are leads. Some of them run orgs, and they're in charge of different orgs. So I think that's important and that's powerful. And then, like, I met you at Valis and Tech Conference.
I connected you too.
Bri-anna was the catalyst.
from big org to big org, because I met her at
we're big org buddies. Or we shall not be
and
named
we
buddies.
were volunteering at one of their groups for black women in design or black women in tech specifically, and that's how we met. And so it's being in those spaces and putting yourself in those places on purpose. It's
for sure
not an accident to find groups like this. Like we went to Afrotech. We were outside of Afrotech. Having a good time. Your husband was having the best time.
He was having the best time. He was having the best time.
We were actually what he was doing.
He definitely met people too. I was like, dang, you meet me before.
I think that the last time I checked, which it may be different now, the stat was like 3% of designers are black. I think that honestly, me being a black designer wasn't necessarily on my mind when I was going to become a designer, because I've always been black. I've always been corporate while black, working while black, everything while black. So I knew the blackness was just going to be there no matter what I put in front of it. Black in UX, black in med, black in whatever. I think that what helped me was networking and finding people at where we're big org buddies, who were where I wanted to be in multiple levels. I'm connected with a VP. I connected with someone who was a people manager, and that was right when I knew I wanted to transition. And I was like, tell me what I need to do. Rip me apart. Here's my resume. Tell me how bad it is. Tell me how horrible my case studies are. Help me. And they kind of took me on as like their personal, I don't want to say project, but almost like I felt like the protege of multiple people. And I could feel their help. And honestly, it helped me so much. And that's how I got, you know, in. I've always been the only black woman. I've always been the only black woman and the youngest. Which is really hard. Especially when a lot of times you're arguably the best. And you get put in a position to lead others. Maybe I don't like you because you're younger. Maybe it has nothing to even do with the fact that you're black. But also maybe I don't like you because you're black. But also maybe I don't like you because you're younger and you're black, and they're telling you to tell me what to do when I've been here for 40 years. And it's hard because you don't want to stop excelling and being your best self, but it's like an unintentional roadblock that often comes up. I would say where I am currently, it is the most diverse team I have ever been on. And I'm very happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bri-anna is happy in her place of employment. She's happy, yo. She talks about how much she loves this company all the time. She's happy. She is so happy.
We got teams, we got diversity, we get time off. Like it's just beautiful. Honestly, I'm very happy. I don't feel like I feel it as much.
That's good.
Which I'm very happy about. In regard to helping other people, I mentor an ADP list. I give my time out for the free. Usually every day over lunch, I'm talking to somebody and it always starts off the same. Oh, I was so happy when I saw you online and you was black.
I saw another black woman in here.
Yep. And I'm like, yeah, I am black and I am in the field and I can help you.
Yeah.
I don't think you remember that conversation that we had when I first started at our.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then like when it dawned on me, first of all, I was like, okay, you've been at this company longer than I have. You're younger than I am. And then you're just like, well, how do I get to, I'm at this pay. How do I get to this pay? And I'm like, in my head, I was like, you're not making this already?
No.
I was like, something is, there's a gap here. So it's just like, okay, well, this is what I know. This is what I did, but I don't know if it'll work specifically because we were in two different organizations.
Right.
So we only connected through that volunteer work that we were doing. And then I was like, well, on this side, on data and AI side, this is standard. I don't even think I make the most on my team, and this is kind of standard from the pay that you were expecting.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
and I was not. Let's be clear. I was making money. I was making money.
And was.
But I didn't know I wasn't making capital M money. Kellie was making capital M money.
I was just sitting here like, wait a minute, what is happening?
And
here?
it was, and that's another level too. Salary expectations.
Yes.
I'm so glad I tapped into the people I tapped into because they were like, no ma'am, no ma'am, no ma'am, no ham, no turkey. Put $20K on top of that. That is, and it's good to know what to expect. And I have had the same conversation with other minorities, other women, and it's been the opposite. I've been the highest paid.
Okay.
And I think a big part of that is we already kind of know that we're going to get like, y'all don't curse on this podcast. We're going to get screwed over.
We do. We certainly do.
We do. Evan, it's explicit.
We already know we're going to get shortchanged.
Yeah.
So we're coming in there guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I know you got the money. Send it back. Work. And so sometimes the opposite, where we're really bringing in the money for real because we know we have to advocate for ourselves, even when it comes to career progression.
Yes.
A lot of times, we advocate a lot because we know that the companies, the organizations will play in your face all day. They will continue to pay you your little pay as long as you don't ask no questions, make no waves. But if you really want a career, if you really want progression, if you want to see your finances move, you have to be assertive. And that's what I gleaned and learned from the people I connected to, and I'm glad that I did because I am in a very great position because Kellie told me I was broke.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had to give it to her.
Kellie told me I wasn't making no money.
I was confused.
And I think when you come from, I was a first generation college student, the same old, first generation college student. My mother was a single parent. Probably every stereotype in the book can be attached to me. And so this money was life-changing money.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm good. I've hit my number. This was my number for when I made 30. I wanted to make this by 30. And I'm making it now. So I'm fine. And then Kellie was like, ma'am, no.
What is this?
No.
Sit up in your seat.
What is this?
So I think that's another thing too. Sometimes we are grateful to make it to become high income earners, not realizing that this really isn't high.
Yeah.
I would say for you, the thing that it wasn't just the income because you're right, you were making good money and then the organization, which shall not be named, does pay well. But for me, it's always like, I don't really look at the number. I don't really care about the number, but I know what I do on the back end. I know that I'm a designer and a developer. I know that I've led projects. I know that I can work with any team. So whatever you're offering for that, you have to raise it up for me. And so I'd work with Bri at that point in time, and I'm like, all right, I see how she organizes, I see how she does this, and then she's telling me, I'm like, no, you have the skills to ask for more. That's all it is. So if I have the skills to back it, there's certain things I tell my students all the time. There's certain job descriptions I don't even look at just based off of the pay. What you're asking for, what the pay is, it doesn't match, and it's not gonna be my time.
Overworked, underpaid, as the
Master's,
great Beyonce said.
Master degree, entry level.
Yeah.
Listen, There was a job description where they were required, strongly recommended on the job description. I showed it to my students, that you have a master's degree in HCI, or Human Computers Interactions, from Carnegie Mellon, MIT, Pratt, Parsons, and it's in New York City. And they were offering, I think, max like $125. And I told them, if y'all taking out that loan for that master's,
not at that money.
You're in the red. It don't matter what is 6, 7 figure, you're in the red. So if they're asking for that, that means you can make twice as much, triple that. Make sure that you know that.
Yeah.
So
now I've heard both of you say how important it is for you to contribute, to pull somebody forward with you.
For sure.
I think that has certainly been true to me. It's very important for me to continue to bring women of color up with me. I regularly spend my lunch hour having conversations with women. I do salary negotiations with them. I be texting people, like somebody was like, oh, they offered me 70. It's too low.
yes,
It's too low. Ask for more. And they're like, I can't ask for more. Give me the phone number. Get the recruiter to call me. I'll ask for more for you.
They're
I
going the lowest
certainly
work.
have been like, when they call you, three-way me in, I'll do the negotiations. Oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm experiencing a cold right now. It's cool. That number is not going to work for me. We need to get that up. So these are the things that you want. And I think it's incredible for people to advocate for themselves, but I do think that a lot of the people that I have mentored have said to themselves, this is the most money, like you said, that my family has ever made, or that, you know, anyone has ever made in my respective circle, and I just want to take it. Like I think she went from $30K to $70 was the offer that she got, and she was like, well, that's $40,000. Like, that's $40,000, Monique. And I'm like, yes. And you can make that $60,000. You don't have to settle where you are right this second. You can continue to go up. But I think that they see that as a place of vulnerability, because what happens if they walk away completely? I was like, you are at your strongest point when someone has provided you an offer. They already know they want you. They've already bought into the value of you. It is your opportunity to negotiate your salary as much as humanly possible. And if you don't do that, you're doing a disservice to yourself. And I always hear people say, women don't negotiate their salaries. They just take whatever is offered to them. I don't know no women who don't negotiate their salaries.
because we have to think of the hiring process as like this process that on the company side, they actually want to stop.
Yes.
Hiring takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resources. It costs a lot of money, right? And so at that point in time, they want to stop that process. And so if they've gotten to you and they like you enough for the team, and then if it's a design position, they've had the team look at you, and the team likes you, everybody loves you, everybody wants to bring you into the family. They're like, what do we have to do to make this work? Well, okay, you have to just pay me my worth, and it'll work. And that's how you stop the process. So you got to look at it from their perspective and make it seem like it's a benefit to them, because it is. They're looking for you. They needed you. They're going to pay you what they need to pay you to keep you.
Yeah.
Well, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And
We're a lot.
it is, but it's been a great conversation. Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to have you back to continue the conversations. But I just want to say thank you to Bri and Kellie for coming in. You guys were great. This is my first time meeting them. Bri gives a great hug. So she's a hugger, as am I. So thank you for coming in. And yeah, we'll see you again.
As we conclude another episode of the Design Imposter podcast, remember, self-doubt may be a universal experience, but it should never define your worth or potential.
Embrace the power of your creativity, trust in your abilities, and continue creating fearlessly. You belong in this space, and your contributions are invaluable to your community and those around you.
Thank you for being a part of the Design Imposter community, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and leave a review to help other imposters find us.
Until our next episode, keep those headphones ready.